Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, good evening. Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting for August 15th. Tonight, going through the agenda, we're going to have a joint discussion with the Board of Selectmen and School Committee. I'll review the fiscal update overview to provide context for proposed spending at 10/30/17 special town meeting. We'll have a draft warrant review for special town meeting as well. 2019 budget directive message, the Board of Selectmen goals and priorities, have a discussion about that. Then we'll talk a little bit about the financial dashboard. We've got looking for a collective bargaining impact update from the school for 2019 fiscal year. And then we'll continue this discussion as we started it last meeting. Something I wanted to add just to kind of keep things, for those of you who weren't here, to keep things kind of in front of us that are of financial concern for this fiscal year and beyond. We'll have a master planning steering committee update. Implementation, sorry. I made this wrong, sorry.
Execution.
My bad. Implementation committee update, sorry. Number 4 is going to be removed as the assistant town administrator is not here tonight, so we'll put that onto our next meeting. Number 5, just talk about the regular scheduled meetings. Set this up so that we have at least one meeting every month. We'll add more as needed. Member updates, public input, minute approval, and then we'll wrap it up. So it looks like, Chuck, you're right on time. So you guys have a quorum, right? 3? Good. Okay, so let's first talk about the fiscal updates and the overview to provide a context for proposed spending. Bonnie, you want to kind of walk us through this a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. Basically, I wanted to provide you with an update of where we stand for the fiscal 2018 operating budget, as far as available funds for operating and capital. So we had a few changes come through with the final state aid numbers and updated, revenue projections on the town side and the school side. Basically, we stand in balance, remaining in balance, with an adjusted surplus of about $119,000. It's about a $108,000 increase from the May town meeting projections. Primarily, this changes through state aid. We had an increase of about $60,000 or $59,147 in net school state aid, and $49,591 in net non-school revenue or town state aid. And this is operating funds. It could be appropriated within the article, the budget adjustment article at the special town meeting if there are adjustments needed. At this time, the only thing that's really on the horizon is the staffing level within the IT department. Nancy is crafting a request to bring forth to the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen at one of their next meetings very soon.
Is this additional salary for headcount?
This would be headcount. I'm not sure if it's going to be a part-time or a full-time. Nancy is kind of trying to figure out what she actually needs. She needs to take some time to figure that out, and she hasn't had that. She's got a lot on her plate right now. But that is the only thing that has been on the horizon as far as what I am aware of at this time for operating requests. On the capital side, we do have some one-time revenues that are available for appropriation in the special town meeting. There's $243,000 available from snow and ice monies that did not get spent, or the deficit that we had reserved for. We always budget for a $450,000 deficit. Again, we didn't tap it this year. And additionally, we got some FEMA reimbursement, so the net impact is we have this $243,000. I've also asked the Board of Assessors to identify any overlay surplus that may be remaining, and they're going to do that this week. That would also be available as a one-time type of capital appropriation. And again, under our policies, we don't use it for operating adjustments. What's on the horizon for capital? We have a couple of items that I'm aware of at this time. There's a request coming forward for approximately $50,000 in a supplemental appropriation for money that was awarded in May for curb and sidewalk repairs to the middle and high schools. With Chris Stoddard being on board now, he didn't get a chance to really vet these figures because he had just come into employment here. So he's looked through that, and he said to really address it properly, it needs to be funded at this level. Otherwise, the repairs you're going to make are going to be a temporary fix.
Is there likely to be any alumni money left over that could go to this? It's all down in the middle school area. I don't know what,
I would venture to say that there's going to be monies left in the PMBC account after alumni is complete.
Can it be used for that, though?
Pardon me?
Can
No,
it be
you-
used for that?
It's part of the,
you could take it out of that, and if town meeting would vote to take it out of excess funds and put it into this.
We'd need to be careful on that. I'd need to look, because if you're going to reallocate borrowed funding, you have to make sure that the term that your new purpose is the same term that the old purpose was.
Well, the sidewalk's gonna be longer than a grass field.
Yeah, it's a curb and sidewalk, and it's in front of the middle school, so I just want to check that.
oh, it's the circle.
Yeah,
It's not with the project.
it's not necessarily just there,
It's worth looking into.
but I can definitely check that.
Check it. Go ahead.
I just, there's been a couple of hands that have been reaching into that pot, so I don't want to say necessarily Fred or Mr. Chairman that there will be funds left over. I anticipate there will be funds left over, but I know that there has been some other discussion around other uses for those funds, one of which I can speak to is the sign from when Russell Street was renovated. The sign's in disrepair, believe it or not. The two riders that are on it, one for Bill Wickham Field and one for Tiger Alumni Field, they're sagging, they're rotting, and whether they were not treated properly or what the deal is. But so Steve Mark is looking into, I don't anticipate there's any warranty on that, but that was one thing that just today,
How old's the sign?
Russell Street was renovated 6 years ago.
2000.
It's faster than you think, huh? Doesn't seem like a long.
Well, the sign, yeah, no. But the sign shouldn't be failing, in my opinion. Unfortunately, the person that installed the sign, I believe, he was from, the contractor was from Melrose, and I believe he's deceased. I mean, it was a single-man shop. So,
So this is stuff we would know by next meeting probably, because the alumni project should be completed, really. I mean, we should be looking at early.
substantial completion.
Yeah.
Well, September 8th is, in theory, the
Right.
grand opening. So there will be scheduled to be a field hockey game on it on the 6th, a field
Yeah.
hockey game on it the afternoon of the 8th, and then the home opening football game is scheduled to be September 8th, the
We're
evening.
not we're not scheduled to meet until the 19th, so we'd have a good idea, at least probably by then, of what.
I think it mostly, at that point, would be punch list. I don't think there'd be any change orders at that
Right.
point. So in all likelihood, the funds that would be spent at that point,
Yeah.
everything that's left over in the contingency will be left over.
What are you expecting to be? Like you talking 10,000 or 100,000 or?
No, I think as of the last PMBC meeting, there was about $132,000 in the contingency, left in the contingency. And that's with the change order to go from seeding the softball field to sodding the softball. There was some significant changes made.
Right.
So we've used about 270,000, probably 10%.
I'm on the Board of Selectmen, not on the FINCOM. I can't do that math that quick, Fred. Yes.
Okay, so the 270,000 in change orders. Okay.
I would say that's, yeah, I think somewhere in that ballpark.
Okay.
Actually, I think the number that Kevin Heffernan, from Vertex, the clerk of the works, I think the number of 132 was the number that he anticipated to be
Okay. Great.
on the table.
I'm
when
still
we
happy to
finish.
hear that that's left, because I know it's easy to go in there and you can always find ways to spend it inside. So if people really don't spend it all, I'm appreciative of that.
Right. If I may, just the decision to do the sod was mostly because there was going to be 2 full seasons that field would not be able to be used if it were seeded, because you have to have at least three full growing
Yep.
seasons, and there was no guarantees that following season that softball would be able to play on there. With sod, which was an upcharge, I can't remember what the number was, but this spring, the girls will be able to play softball on that field.
So is there any way to earmark that leftover money, whatever it's going to be, towards future maintenance of alumni? Because you said there's maintenance going on with the softball field. I see Keith raising his hand.
Well,
Keith?
just on the question for the $4 million appropriation that was made by the November town meeting last year, it was funded by borrowing for the most part, but also there was a transfer of $140,000, $160,000, something like that, So while the borrowing portion, you don't want to fiddle with, you don't want to repurpose that money for anything. If you need it, you should spend it, but if you wanted to, say, go back to town meeting and amend if there's money left over, you could arguably repurpose that money, say, for maintenance of Alumni Field or something else, or for, whatever else. It wouldn't fall into the bond, repurposing bond fund trap.
And if I recall correctly, one of the anticipated or potential change orders that Vertex had put forward was for equipment for maintenance, is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
That's
an
part of the
upgrade-
change
an upgrade of
orders
the
that have
equipment.
already been earmarked, though, right?
And I'm,
Exactly correct, yeah. So the included with the turf company was providing kind of like the base model groomer, which was basically either use manpower, you find a way to hook it up to a tractor, that kind of thing. So there was an upgrade made to get the power equipment and the correct attachments to make it easier so that it would protect our investment.
All right, so with regards to all these updates, you folks have any comments from the BOS, any thoughts where you want to go with this? As far as what we're looking at doing here? These monies, available monies for one-time fund use?
Greg, there's also one other item. The Master
Did I miss
Plan
it?
Implementation Committee is looking to get some additional funding. I had originally been told it was about $100,000 in funding, but I think it's $50,000 request based on the email that I sent you.
Oh, it's on the sheet, yeah, okay, sorry about that, I missed that. So why don't we talk about that then? So the 250,000 they're looking for?
No, 100,000 in total.
100,000 in total.
2 times 50.
Two 250s.
Tuesday's
Sorry,
Friday.
this is Tuesday, I'm already.
She's messing with it. She's messing with it. I'm just,
Yeah, you're really messing.
chair.
Flip over 2 pages. Lucy says flip over 2 pages. Because it's also in here.
Ah, gotcha.
Here, on this one, it's right. It's in here. On A and B,
Yeah, I'm seeing
right
it.
here.
250s.
100,000, well, here it says 100,000, see?
Okay, all right, yeah, I see it. All right. So there's 100,000 that they're looking for, so we got this right. And that is for the project that they need to do for study,
To implement the
to implement
recommendations.
the recommendations.
We have more details on that, what that means?
There's a,
That's coming up.
That's coming up, we got a
Oh,
presentation.
okay.
Yeah. That's why I was
Okay.
kind of out of turn with that a little bit, so it kind of threw me off.
so those are the one-time items that I'm aware of. Again, we don't have the overlay surplus number. There will be a number. I'm not sure how much it will be, but they will vote that this week for us. The other thing that was brought up by Fred, which is an interesting, way to look at things, is part of our funding plan for the fall is we need to appropriate the money that we had planned on out of the debt exclusion stabilization fund. That amount is $258,000. What we're doing with that is we're reducing the debt service level down, the excluded debt service level down to the fiscal 2022 amount, which basically last year saved us about 17 cents on the single rate. This year would save about 13 cents on the single rate. That requires a 2/3 vote, so we figured we would take it up in the fall and deal with it then. We could use some of this available funding and leave money and leave some, either some or all of the money in the debt exclusion stabilization fund instead, and allow us to provide some more savings in additional years. So it's an option. We could do all of it, part of it, none of it.
Any thoughts on that, Selectman?
Sorry.
Sorry?
Yeah, but Lonnie's point is whether you take the money out of the debt exclusion stabilization fund or let the appropriate, or just not spend the snow and ice money, that either way, we can deliver less from the property tax bill, so.
I think the taxpayers like to hear that. All right. Well, if there isn't any more discussion on that, let's keep this thing moving, huh?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, just
Sure.
that the Board of Selectmen will be voting next Monday night to open the warrant for the October 30th special town meeting. We'll begin inserting articles on the warrant, so the ones that you, the list that you see here, and that the board has seen, is the first step will be diving more into the weeds of what are the particular requests, and the board will be deciding on August 21st and September 11th, those two meetings, which articles will be inserted. And the warrant will close on Friday, September 22nd.
The 22nd will close. So we need to make sure that we schedule the 19th, yeah. I'm working on that, so.
And comparatively, it's just a few financial articles, it's a lot of zoning, it's a lot of other things that hopefully will.
We're gonna have a 20-minute special town meeting?
No, you're not. No, but
Wishful
we will have plenty of quality time to deal with the non-financial issues that need to get debated, so.
Okay, all right, appreciate that update too. All right, then, the last piece of this discussion that we had in here was looking at your selectmen goals and priorities, and I have them here. Was there anything in particular that you wanted to call out, that you wanted us to help work on, or we can help you work on, or? Making it deep, Mr. Chairman.
Want me to speak to the?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, one piece of it, Mr. Chairman, is that we would like to get back on track on the financial policies review process, and Mr. Chairman and myself will be the representatives from our board, and I think
Chair
we'd
and
like
Vice Chair, yeah.
like to engage with you folks and whoever it is from the school committee now. It's been Mike Fontanella right through. And I think ideally, would hope to get at least one meeting off the ground with the elected appointed officials and the staff before Labor Day, just to identify where we were at. It's been quite a while since we looked at it, and, you know, we've been busy with other things, obviously, but the intention, which I think is worth pursuing, is to keep that a living document by staying on it and seeing what either we can add, subtract, or change, and keeping everybody fresh with its content too. I don't know that, we haven't had an internal discussion about issues to raise on it, but maybe that's what we can accomplish at the first meeting.
If you want us to steer this, we should steer this on our
It's
side?
just, it's a scheduling issue, for scheduling purposes, sure. Yeah.
One thing I would suggest that I ran into last year, there was paranoia over if we didn't have 100% participation, that people didn't want to have meetings.
Right.
And I would suggest that you just go with, if you have a quorum, have a meeting.
Right.
And if you want to hold votes until you have 100%, fine. But to be perfectly blunt about it, I get pissed off at it, and I just said, screw it, I'm not going to waste my time trying to herd this group of cats.
I
So
remember Fred, yeah.
That's why we didn't do much last year. So if you guys can all agree that, you know, at least discussion can be had with a quorum, then I think you can move things forward. If not, you're gonna run into a lot of people's travel schedule and all that stuff, and it's painful.
I remember you made valiant efforts to get things scheduled, and we fell into the trap of letting, if any one person couldn't do it, we didn't meet, and that was kind of the end of it,
So
so.
I think, you know, if you guys can agree to do that, then I think you can make some progress.
Yeah.
Thanks for that input. We'll, I'll take that under my directive to try to set up the next meeting with you folks.
That sounds great.
We'll add the school committee to it as well.
Fine.
I was hoping nobody was gonna notice I was here.
Like Colonel Flag from MASH. To answer the question that you asked, though, Mr. Chairman, there are a number of goals that we have that have the potential of having some fiscal impact. I don't think there's going to be anything for the sewer, at least not in October, where I wouldn't have any kind of an ask.
Nothing for this year, although it's probably smart for us to get back before you with an update from our engineer consultants. If nothing else, Keith, can you forward, if you haven't already, the last presentation they gave us, which speaks to some of the longer-term financing options? I'm sure Bonnie's as familiar with it as anybody is, but that could help explain why where we're at and why we aren't looking for any money in the short term beyond what's already been appropriated.
So we say this year, this fiscal year?
Well, at least for this
Or
fall
this fall.
town meeting, it's a little too early to talk about next spring, but I don't think we're anticipating anything for the spring either.
Okay.
What we are doing is exploring the possibility of pursuing external funding for the third component to the design. And our consultant has identified certain possibilities there, and we're still looking at what kind of funding options may exist.
And we're still dealing with rough estimates too on
Yeah.
costs. That's the part they're in right now is, costing.
One of the challenges that we've faced is, and there's actually in the most recent Beacon, the Massachusetts Municipal newsletter, we got another shout out, being like the first in the nation to be presenting this type of project.
Congratulations.
Because it's awesome, but unfortunately, because we're the first, there's nobody with buckets of money that is
We can't
saying.
take it to the bank yet.
Yeah, so we're having to get pretty creative, and we've had, Mass DEP's been out, they came out with.
Very
quite different
encouraging.
statements.
They're
Yeah.
excited, so, I mean, they recognize we don't neatly fit into existing programs and kind of want to work with us because they like what we're doing.
But there was a half a dozen representatives from
Yeah.
Mass DEP, and they had every.
They must have thought we were giving them a free breakfast or something because everybody came out.
We had water, which was nice.
And that discussion ranged from the final design phase all the way through funding the actual implementation of the project, both grants, low-cost loans, zero-cost loans, what options are available to us going forward.
I do have a good friend that works for the DEP, and he said if they had their choice, everyone would be sewered, everywhere. So that's probably why they all came out. They heard sewering and they got excited.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see the level of excitement at their level. They really want to engage with us and help us out. There are some other, like Crosstown Connect, Complete Streets, there's some we discussed last night at our meeting, TIP funding for road repairs,
Right.
and
Yeah, we're going after some significant state funding for road and sidewalk reconstruction of a sort that we haven't gone after before. I don't want to say that the world's never seen before, but
Is that main streets in town, or is that side streets as well?
it would be, for the tip funding, we're going after major arteries. I mean, we're going after Foster Street, we're going after Great Road, sidewalks.
Harwood
Sure.
Avenue, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Harwood,
Harwood
Shaker
Ave
Lane.
is on the.
In a common thread of roads with sidewalk needs? Is that
Yeah,
right, Keith?
yeah, what's most competitive for tip funding is if it's multimodal or it's serving some, I mean, the Foster Street serves a commuter rail station. There are other locations where we're serving schools, so we're trying to put together a competitive approach, but we're going after millions of dollars in state road funding of the sort that we haven't done since Goldsmith Street. We got 3.5 million. And to go after that, to go after much of that, the town needs to do the initial legwork of bringing the design plans to 25% level at our expense as an indication of our interest in it. And that gets us, even for a lower amount, we get in the pipeline, we get to stand in line for TIP funding, and then we bring it along to a higher design level. And say for a $400,000 local investment, we can go after $4 million in construction funding, so.
So on the state roads, the state wouldn't take responsibility for that and do that on their own? Like, they can Great
Not
Road.
not initially, say, using the example of Great Road, for example. How do we get, we have advocated for the state to get them to do as much as they can with their own resources. But you do come up against a limit. Yeah, and everyone else is trying to do that too. But that the way the TIP process works, the Transportation Improvement Plan, and that's where all the state and federal dollars go and then get portioned out by a group that meets in Boston called the NPO. And it's the entity that decides how all the federal transportation dollars get spent. The key is to get on the list and to get going, so we want to do that. But for a state road, where MassDOT is not going, it's not important enough to them to pursue it on their own, they're looking for a signal from the municipality that's important to you, that's important to the town, and to the point where you're willing to do the initial design phase, and then you put it in the funding pipeline, where if it gets done, it would get done with state and federal dollars, it would not get done by the town, and the responsibility to maintain it would be the states, not the towns.
Well, I guess having a lucrative, or an MBTA, really a regional MBTA station now, probably looks a little more attractive as well if you're going up against other towns for this money, correct?
Yeah, Foster Street in particular, I think would be very competitive, because it's linked into a, you know, multimodal.
Yeah.
They have a scoring system for how they rate different projects that come before them, and certainly intermodal, you know, access to commuter rail and terminals and things, education, getting children safe to the schools. So there's different things that give you a higher grade. So Chris has done this in the past in other communities, and he has had some success. So in order to get on the list, however, we have to put some skin in the game. So we're gonna have to spend some money in order to do the design work, to have these things shovel-ready, like Goldsmith. The reason we got that is because somebody else fell off the list. The state reached out to Keith and said, hey, you've got this project ready.
But also, I think Chris's anticipation is to do the engineering work out of the appropriated maintenance funds, right?
That's right, we're not going after any additional money to do the initial design work. We're going to use the road budget, operating funds to do it, and not ask for more.
Yeah, he's been very
But
responsive.
the overall road plan, and if you haven't seen it, haven't had an update on it, we should schedule the DPW director, because with the same budget money, with no increase in spending, we're going to do many more miles of roadway through other techniques other than just reconstructing everything. There's a lot of preventative maintenance being planned and a lot of work, and it's what's possible because we have a PE on board to guide.
He's paying us.
So,
Oh, yeah, multiple times over.
The other component of the projects that we're looking at is that they fall in at different dollar value levels, so there are smaller projects and bigger projects, so that depending on what funding may become available at a certain time, we may be able to slot one of those projects in where other ones may not be viable because the dollar value is either too big or too small. So by having multiple projects essentially shovel-ready within a couple of years, we allow the funding agencies to mix and match a little bit.
sometimes the waiting period is 10 years for TIP projects, but there is the opportunity for smaller projects to sort of cut in line as funds become available.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think, Bonnie, we'll need to work on that, getting Chris here for one of our meetings, give us an update on that, because I think that's valuable information.
Just meet as early as you can.
He lives in Greenfield.
Oh, gosh. Well, that might be tough.
6:30 in the morning.
We gotta get him a car.
It'll be a 7 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, just the last funding item that we are looking at, and it's, Mr. Zeldin and Ms. Houston are here, is funding the implementation.
For the
Yeah,
implementation.
master plan implementation.
And that's
So
the
that's
two,
only other
the
item from our goals.
$250,000 request, not the
I'm sure they'll
$250,000.
be happy to accept $250,000.
I was kind of taken back by that a little bit. Really? Before we,
Just to whet your appetite.
that's just a starter, right? Before we move on, I'm just looking at your goals, and if there's anything in here that we want to add to this meeting that we're looking at planning, and that is, let's see, update the financial policies, which we spoke about, the debt exclusion stabilization, we probably should have a discussion about that since that's on your goals. The blended CPA fund, not sure what you're looking at doing there. Just like to maybe talk about that one as
Yeah,
well.
we're running out of mitigation funds to.
You don't have anything, right? I thought you
We
used
have
it.
some left. We have maybe about $200,000 left to put in, although we will be getting more mitigation funds for once
Something
some of
good.
our new
Projects?
facilities come online.
Okay, got it. And then, yeah, plan for when the town can take on additional debt. I like that one as well. So certainly a couple things that we can talk about. Board members, anything else that we need to add? Did I miss anything before we move on to the next one?
No, the stormwater, MS4, are we to the point where we have any idea what that's actually gonna cost us? I mean, it's,
In the short term, there's a one-year delay that the DEP just announced today that they are joining EPA. The new MS4 permit for municipal stormwater was issued both by the state and the feds. EPA announced a couple of weeks ago that they were going to delay implementation for 1 year. DEP joined them in a press release that we saw that was dated yesterday. Nevertheless, and that simply means that the permit that was going to take effect this year takes effect a year from now, but we still have a permit from 2003, which still has requirements. So the scope of work that we're doing this year is going to be focused on meeting the 2003 permits. We don't need to, submit a notice of intent or some of the bigger ticket items for the consultant to work on. We don't need to do those this year, so we're not. But the scope may be more. We have a $100,000 appropriation for this year. Maybe we'll spend 30, maybe a little more, but we're looking at complying with the 2003 permit. But we are continuing to plan for what it's going to be for, once the new permit kicks in.
so the closer we get to that, no new initiatives cost less than old initiatives. So if, as you guys work on it, the earlier we know it's going to be 200,000 instead of 100,000, at least we can start thinking about it, selectmen and whatnot, because it's just going to drive choices, that's all. So, if we can keep, at least be apprised of that.
Can I just follow on the question, though? I mean, what caught my attention here is 2003, and we're still implementing. Was that the expectation when we started? It seems like a long time. The world changes in 14 years.
Well, the permit was issued in 2003.
Yeah.
And it took them a decade and a half to finalize
Okay.
its
All right,
successor permit.
that's a missing piece that I
That was very
like, wait a minute.
You recall, we were at town meeting a year ago to pass bylaws, which frankly were with the 2003 permit.
Okay.
So we finally came into compliance last year with that portion of our, very old permit.
And if I may, we're in a pretty good spot. We've got Myers and Harrington, our town council. They have a specialist on staff that has counseled us and kind of keeps us, I would say, ahead of the game.
Yeah, very much so, yeah. Rebecca is very
Right.
knowledgeable. We use Ty and Bond as our consulting engineer on the project. We're also part of 2 stormwater collaboratives, 2 groups of fellow communities. We have all, for the last several years, we've been part of the Northern Middlesex Stormwater Collaborative out of Lowell. They were kind enough to include us in a grant-funded project. And just last year, the state funded another stormwater collaborative with the Magic the 13-town Magic subregion, which we're also a part of. That one has some newcomers. Boxbow, for example, does not have a 2003 permit, and it was struggling with what do they do. Now, they have a year in which they get to do nothing because they don't have an existing permit, but they and many other communities are trying to see what can we all do together.
Trying to step up.
What provisions, whether it's public education or collective procurements or something, can we do to achieve some economies of scale in carrying out this MS4 permit.
Just if I may, just going down the list, the MOU, are we making any progress on that?
I can speak to that, yes. So you're talking about field maintenance and
Yeah.
use, yes. Mike Fontanella and Gary Austin and I have met. We've got, in draft form, we've got an MOU. It has some,
Okay, so when will it be reviewed by the board? So,
there's possibly, well, I don't think I'll have anything done by tomorrow, or I'm sorry, Thursday, in order for us to review it on next Monday. But I'm very confident that we'll have something.
Okay, so within the next month or so,
Absolutely.
it should, okay. So
Yes.
whatever that looks like should be dollarized, and whose bucket it should go in, so we don't have this contest
We went into it
next
with
May,
that
the
very
way
much
we did
in mind.
last May. Okay, great.
We want to open the budget process with that resolved.
Absolutely.
Is that just addressing maintenance, or is it kind of like the overall, who actually owns this thing,
Care,
it's
custody,
making
control, and
decisions and
maintenance.
so on? Just maintenance,
Care, custody, control, and maintenance.
custody, control, and maintenance, okay.
Okay. And do you, because I see your name here, you can pass it off to Cindy, because her name's there too. Athletic fields needs study is down on the number 10 here.
Yeah.
I know that's been ongoing. Is there any update, or are we?
Yeah, there's, actually, Park and Rec is meeting down the hall right as we speak, and they have been working with Gail, and they did an assessment, looking at the fields that we currently have, as well as potential locations for fields, Morgan property, the potential use of Area A or Parcel A at the Cooper Farm property. There's some land on Russell Street, just past Delaney Drive, before you go over 495. So they're looking at everything and then kind of applying a number to, in order for the Russell Street field to be feasible, it would cost X. And, then what would the maintenance be on that, and so forth and so on. So I think we're probably about 80% of the way there before we do some sort of a presentation.
Okay, so maybe something for May town meeting?
I think that would be more likely than fall time.
Not fall, I think, yeah, it's too late, but
Yeah.
but it's moving to that stage, okay.
Correct.
Okay.
If there were needs for, for instance, if at the fall town meeting, the town votes to accept the land, the deed from the Cooper Farm property, and somebody other than me was involved in having that become an athletic field, that would be probably the most likely candidate if there were going to be some spend on some sort of a field. But as far as the maintenance and stuff like that, Fred, absolutely, May town meeting would be where we'd see some numbers put to the field maintenance.
Great. Oh, and the space needs study, that, again, the only other one that I think.
Is my name on that too, Fred?
Yep.
Can we go back to this for every assignment?
I don't know.
Was I absent that day?
I don't know, but I got on a roll here. What, I mean, are we making progress, or
Yeah,
how far away?
We'll be having a report from Alan Lieb, the architect and consultant that that is under contract with us to do the study. Has involved all the staff, all the departments, all the space, included looking at outside office space. Specifically, he's gone to and looked at the DCU building. It's available, so he was able to get into it and take a look at it. So in order for him to truly determine what a baseline number would be for us, I think he has to, and Keith, you've made this point, I think you probably articulated it better than I, but he'd really have to take a look at the library going on the hillside, the slope side. If it were to go there, what would it cost to renovate the vacated space where the library was in order to accommodate all the needs of the town offices? So that would really be our baseline. So if that comes in at X, and we're looking at other alternatives, whether it's the DCU building or another commercial space in town, or building or what have you, it would have to be relative to X.
But we do have some hard dates or target dates for when the report's gonna be done, right? I mean, it's pretty soon, right?
Yeah.
We're expecting it to be done within the month. We're scheduling an
So sort of
update for
fall
the selectmen's
review,
meeting.
sort
Like
of
thing.
September 11th is going to be pretty busy. Bring a toothbrush. It'll be a long agenda, but
Okay. Good. Didn't we have a rough number for the renovation if the library was vacated?
it was very rough, but it was not based on, I think maybe we guessed $1 million or $2 million.
It was just a
but
guess.
Yes, I guess.
It was nothing more
The
than a
library
placeholder.
had a number for what it would renovate to, what it would cost to renovate and keep them there, right? Wasn't that-
That was one of the
That's
scenarios.
Was that where we got bucks?
If the local share is, say, 8 million for the new library building, and it costs 4 million to rehab this building to meet code, because once you touch the building or do major stuff, then you're talking about sprinklers and all kinds of building system stuff. Then if that's the number, then that's a baseline to compare anything else to. But we want to know what that is first, and Alan Ream's mission is to
Establishing that.
get that number for us, Montauk.
Anything else, board members? Anything else from you folks? School, don't want to leave you out of this?
No, sorry it was late, I missed the first couple of
You're
minutes.
gonna
It's all
get,
about the schools.
you're on the bullseye here in a
Le-
minute.
Level funding.
Level funding the whole way.
You don't have to deliver that to Mike then. Oh, we do every year, so.
Okay, well,
Then he
thanks.
pulls the cotton out of his
Miss
ears.
anything?
No, I think you just wanted to see where the.
That's on the
dashboard,
next
yeah.
one, yeah. So, all right, I'll move on to number 2, talking about the financial dashboard, and again, those of you that weren't here last meeting, it's something I'm trying to introduce. And it's just keeping things on the front burner, if you will, the things that we're concerned about, start thinking about it, ask the other board members to think about it, and make sure that we kind of come to an agreement what we want to see on here. So this is kind of a working document, if we will, starting from scratch. But one of the things that we did put on here is looking for an update for the collective bargaining impact for the schools for fiscal 19.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got anything for us?
I can give you an update, we've got, there's not a lot we can share, we have another meeting tomorrow. I'm pretty confident that we'll have things, we made a lot of progress in June, and we'd probably be done if it wasn't for traveling in July.
Sure.
We've got a meeting tomorrow, and after tomorrow, we'll give you a sense of whether it'll be another 2 weeks or further than that, but I'm pretty confident it'll be wrapped up hopefully by school start date, or soon thereafter.
Okay.
If I may, is there anything, just out of curiosity, I know you can't speak because it's in bargaining, but staggering that would affect the town that you can see?
Nothing groundbreaking.
No, okay.
All right, so we'll keep this on the back burner, or, well, keep in the back of your mind, I guess, that we want to try to think about the things that we want to add to this financial dashboard. So as you think of items, just email us and we'll get them on here. And we'll keep them on there until we get the final updates, such as this one, as we go throughout the year.
Yeah, I think a progress report, periodic progress report on the space needs, big ticket item. Fields, potentially big ticket item. Any of those kinds of projects that are sort of out there.
Master plan too.
Yeah, coming into the next budget cycle or even the cycle after, if we can sort of keep those kinds of things. And it doesn't have to be every month or whatever.
Review
but
here.
Just every period of time, we can have an update, or even, if the master plan implementation, if that gets on a roll and you see bucks coming down the road, raise a flag kind of thing. So
Good
that would
suggestion.
be my suggestion.
Okay. Duly noted. Anything else? Okay. All right, so I'm going to just jump around a little bit before we get to the master plan implementation committee update. I just want to do the other couple quick things that we've got, and we'll get you guys on. So listed all of the meeting dates in here under number 5. 4 we're skipping over again. We'll get back to that the next meeting. So you see the dates here, that's kind of the plan. We'll add meetings as we need. I think we've got a joint with you folks, the selectmen, the end of, and it's not on this list, but it's a joint with you at your meeting, the end of September, correct?
Also, the Saturday budget session's not on that list too, right? That's what December.
So yeah, we missed that one too. That's
One of the others.
December
16?
16th, yes, December 16th. We'll make a note to add that.
So where's the joint one in September?
Get reelected.
Yeah, I think it's this.
25th, September 25th?
September 25th.
December 25th.
September 25th for
Okay.
joint with you folks. All day on the 16th of December, you'll be sitting with us in the police station, and we'll be going through all of the budgets.
Maybe next year we can do it at the fire station.
Good suggestion.
We could almost do it this year at the fire
There
station.
you go.
Good, I just want to heat.
I I have down October 24th. That was picked as a joint meeting of the FinCom and School Committee and the budget and the schedule of the selectmen.
Yep.
What was that?
Yeah,
October
we
24th?
didn't list, Greg, when we were crafting this, you wanted to just get the finance committee regular meetings.
All of those items we just mentioned have been on a budget calendar that, Bonnie, you sent out earlier, right? So
You were just trying to get the finance committee meetings in between those,
Yeah,
so.
just want to make sure we get those.
We need to get them on our
calendars.
calendars, though,
Put
so.
them on our calendars. Yeah, we'll update this, get that back out. Okay, yeah, like I said, we'll add meetings if we need them. If there's something that comes up we have to meet, we'll add it in. Member updates, anything from anyone else? I think we've got a lot of stuff covered. Anything here? Public input, I know you guys are coming up next. Any other public input out there? I want to make sure I don't miss anybody. Looking for a, wait a minute, you folks both missed the last meeting, correct? We did too. So we can't approve the minutes from July 11th, so we'll have to put that on the next meeting. And then, now, okay, so we're good with that. Now let's go to the master plan steering implementation committee.
Okay, we're gonna
Gotta get this right.
make it real easy for you, all right?
Gonna make it quick?
Yeah, no, I wanna make this easy, so now on this to help you navigate, just call it MPIC, all right?
MPIC?
MPIC, just like the,
And pick. Okay, I'll get it done eventually. Floor's yours.
up here, we'll do it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dan.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I'm gonna start.
We're not going through this whole book, are we?
You are. Everyone else gets off the hook.
It's a test before we adjourn.
No, actually, it's right now. Here we go. This is the town's master plan. So this was finished in April, and the implementation committee was formed as requested by the citizens of the town, and we've been in operation since then. And the reason I'm showing you the book is because this is what the town is interested in doing. And this is what most of the committees that I've visited so far, your next one, the Board of Selectmen, have already, thanks to them, not only endorsed it, but actually have adopted most of what's in here, only because of the only thing that restricts them is time. They have adopted the goals of the master plan and the projects in the master plan as their own. So I'm also requesting that you do exactly the same. I want the whole town, our committee, our mandate is to make sure the whole town is on this, shall we say, series of projects. And have the next one. If you find this, I don't know how many of you had a chance to go online, have you seen it? If you go to 173 of the book, just beyond page 173, 174, are a series of 5 pullouts. And each of the pullouts has a series of recommendations that came from the citizens of this town themselves. There are 67 of them. That doesn't mean that we're going to do 67 items. Some of them overlap, some of them may not be viable to do for a variety of reasons. And they're also, as it were, considered in terms of importance. Not necessarily priority, but importance. Next one. Now, our process, just so you know how we're operating, so it's not a surprise to you. This process was arrived at through talking to other towns, committees that have gone through this, town managers and other administrators, and it's very simple. We're going to do this on a project-by-project basis. And the way we're doing it is through the residents of the town and all the major committees and minor committees, commissions, and other organizations with an interest in particular items and who have expertise in it. This is most important, who have an interest in expertise and really wants to, do some heavy lifting. That includes you, especially you. You'll see why in a moment. Next.
It's only money.
No, actually it isn't.
Johnny OneNote over here.
I wish it were that simple, all right? All right, the communication and exchange is very important for this, shall we say, for the master plan to be realized, and that's obvious communication which is already in place between the Board of Selectmen and you and the Planning Board. That's an essential first start. More and more committees are going to have to, as we're enjoy your, shall we say, already developed habits. and we're going to do everything we can to encourage them to do so. If not, and to the extent that we have to, both I'm prepared, as well as our vice chair, Anna Houston, to do the heavy lifting. Now, the next slide. In order to get started in a sensible way, we decided, that is, the committee determined 7 initial projects. These are not necessarily the most important, or the most exciting, or the most expensive. They are initial. And they're chosen on the basis of the fact that they can be accomplished within a reasonable period of time and have an effect, or they have to be started now in order for them to be completed in someone's lifetime. Some of these projects, I'm sure, will take several years for any number of reasons. And here they are. The 7 of them include, in no particular order, realizing and revitalizing the common. This, by the way, I just want to emphasize, this one was extremely of extreme interest to the town as a whole. So it's, shall we say, it's not an, quote, an option. However, what revitalization and realization means is a different issue. Okay? We're a long way from having a master plan and the kind of digging that has to be done literally and figuratively. However, the most important part that we've started is, of course, the march towards sewering. And we'll have more comments to make about that later. The next one is zoning assessment and diagnostics. Roughly speaking, something on the order of 70 to 80% of what the town needs to do in one way or another is going to be affected by and is affected by zoning. So with the help of the planning board, what they and we are preparing to undertake is 2 forms of assessment. One of them is diagnostics, which is simply to what extent do our rules conform and comply with federal and state law. We have a few that don't, they have to be fixed. The other question is, what kind of strengths and weaknesses do our zoning rules and regulations and bylaws have that either help us or hinder us from realizing the components in the plan? That's the basis for a request for a consultant, especially on the assessment part, not the diagnostic part. The diagnostic is legal, that is one skill set, the assessment is more of an economic one. The third project is transportation. This again is greatly, shall we say, affects many people in town, not just moving people, but things, parking, trains, the whole, shall we say, gamut of activities are involved in moving things from people from one place to another. And by the way, the numbers that you see after each of these refer specifically for your convenience and reference when you do your homework. Fred? When you do your homework, that's what I thought, okay. So that you know where to look in the master plan. Housing, this is a tough one for any town. It's no less difficult for us. A start has been initiated on a targeted development program for housing that can be made more accessible from a financial point of view and from a size point of view for seniors. And the planning board has taken the initiative and pushed this forward with a lot of help and push from the Council on Aging. So there's another committee, by the way, that's fully engaged and concerned about not only services for them, but services for the town, including transportation and housing. And there's a lot of wisdom on that particular committee, and we intend on using that. The space needs, you've already heard about this, is not an insignificant survey. On the surface, it looks fairly innocent, and shall we say, okay, we need space, but it will more than likely have an impact on several. In fact, two of them are located there on the notice there. One of them is a community center, which, by the way, the town is very interested in having. It's up very close to, as it were, strong interest and desire as realizing the common. So be forewarned, as it were, that these are things that mean a great deal to our residents. The historic survey was undertaken because it not only was in progress, but because the question has always been in town, and we are readdressing it, and that is, what is the historic significance in town? It could make a big difference between not only how the common is realized, but how other neighborhoods begin seeing themselves in what revitalization they may need. And finally, the last thing we want to be part of the initial 7 is to make sure that the master plan loses its identity as a master plan, because it's not something, a shiny thing outside what the town does. This is what the town does. So I would like to see, what we're asking to see, we're going to push to see, is the components contained herein made an ordinary routine part of what you do, what the Board of Selectmen does, and what the Planning Board does. So this is the guidebook. It's not rocked in stone. It doesn't provide the detailed instructions of how much or information of how much something costs, where the financing comes, what payments must be due, or what the payoffs might be, but it's your guide. So if it's not here, you have to ask the question, why isn't it here? More things may be added if citizens come forward with, shall we say, alternatives. Have the next slide. After the initial 7, there's more to follow. So just because we have 7 to start, that doesn't mean we won't be moving on to more. But the 7 will occupy us for a while, and you'll see why in a moment. Next one. This is just a pictorial run-through accompanied by why we were asking for help, basically to help the town address some of the issues. Littleton Common. This is a fairly significant, it's probably one of the most significant undertakings the town has taken. It probably will take quite a number of years, a lot of thought, and a lot of work. The beginning of it is, of course, the sewering. However, it's very, very important that we understand why the Littleton Common. What's the benefit? What's the cost? What are the risks? So far, the effort to try to understand the answers or get answers to these questions has to wait until the gating events associated with the sewering. The sewering has to make more progress. But in the meantime, I think it would be a very good idea, not an idea, but a compelling idea, to get another set of eyes on the very questions that I raised. Why are we in the common? What's its impact going to be? What's the benefit to the town from several different dimensions? I'll be very happy if you're interested to know the preliminary process I've gone through to suggest that the consultant, whoever we hire, for about $50,000, the total price is unknown, obviously, since all I can do is conduct a preliminary, shall we say, review. But what we're interested in are questions that are economic in nature. What is the impact? And social in nature. What are the benefits to the citizenry, really, if we do this kind of revitalization? Now, already we know that by sewering the common, we not only address a very serious environmental issue. I'd much rather the town do this, because we control our destiny. If we allow the state to tell us we're in jeopardy, then we have to do the whole thing on our nickel. It's not our choice. The second, it does affect community development, not just economic development. It is possible, there's no bias here, housing, mixed use, as well as what we'll call a new center, a real true commercial center for amenities for the town. So what the common will be in detail, we don't know. You see some of the beginning aspirations shown behind me. But my suggestion here, my request is that we need an economic pair of eyes, not a financial pair of eyes, not just an engineering pair of eyes, but a pair of economic eyes who can, as it were, provide both you, the planning board, and to the extent necessary, the Board of Selectmen, with a view on what the impact will be and what's the, shall we say, best pathway to realization. And this will be obviously inherited by subsequent boards. Let's have the next one. I've already discussed zoning, so I won't dwell on this longer. It's the other place that we're asking for assistance of $50,000. Again, for the same reasons, to basically look at what are the strengths and weaknesses are of our current bylaws that either help us or make it more difficult for us to accomplish the master plan objectives. We expect, obviously, the planning board, along with the Board of Selectmen and anyone and other interested parties to benefit from the results of the findings. The next one.
Before you go on, can I
Please.
ask a question?
Sure.
So you've got the two big projects here that we're looking at.
What two
Is
big
it
projects?
this zoning and the common? You say big.
Well, it's big because of its implication, not because of its amount of money. This is not a big deal. This is,
Just what you call it on your slides.
no, big, it's called big because of its impact.
Got it. So my question is, are you looking at doing one before the other? Are you doing them in conjunction? What's the thought process there?
You mean the diagnostics, or which one?
Zoning and the common.
And
The
the
common is a totally different skill set. The skill set in the common has to do with individuals who have, shall we say, strong urban, suburban, economic analysis skills.
Parallel tracks.
That's
Yeah,
not
parallel.
that's
Answer your
not-
question is parallel tracks. Parallel. Two different people.
So if I may, so on the zoning side,
Yeah.
you said you presented this to the planning board already?
Yes.
And they don't have knowledge, this type of knowledge in-house right now, understanding already what zone, some of the zoning issues that we have in the.
Strengths and weaknesses. What I'm going by, to answer your question, is if you look in the master plan, it's recommended very strongly by the consultants who help the town put this together, that we do exactly that. And this was after they, shall we say, had a chance to get, over a period of 2 years, pretty familiar with what Littleton can do and can't do.
So I recommend you.
On its own. This is a supplement. This is not a replacement of or instead of. It's basically a move along. Also, we have Maren, who basically is, shall we say, I don't know if she has 9 jobs or 15, I'm never quite sure. And most of those jobs are every day, intense. And what I'm doing is adding yet another one which is intense and of a shorter duration.
No, I definitely need to look into that more, obviously, it's a large document, but I was just, this one specifically, because I know it was coming just on, I would like to think that our board already knows what is in compliance, that's all.
No, hold on. They want the compliance. They actually, the compliance part, they've already, as it were, pushed along.
So are we talking about if
Two different
if we
operations.
were to implement some of these things, how would that be in compliance? Is that what we're looking at, or are we looking at?
Let me separate out two things. There are already existing rules
Yep.
and bylaws that may be out of compliance with law.
Laws have changed
That's one
over the years.
activity.
Okay, I understand what you're
That's
saying.
diagnostic.
Right, and the board members are not necessarily up to speed on some of the federal regulations that have changed that put pieces of our zoning bylaw out of compliance.
And the second one in parallel, separate from that, is basically, here's the zoning. We're looking at the economic consequences of zoning, if you want to just look at it that way.
Right.
That's a different function entirely.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I asked the question that I asked, and I spent a little time on the planning board, Lauren's familiar with me over there, is I would think you'd want to do the zoning first, so then you can kind of mold the common around what the zoning allows for, versus saying, let's set up the common and redo something, but we're going to continue to work on zoning.
I think these are all projects running in parallel. They're
I
not in
understand.
sequence. So we're doing the zoning, we're trying to get the zoning started, the zoning analysis done as early as possible, as it were, because it's going to be stretched out over a longer period of time, and before sightings, which properties, what does it cross, what rules do we have to follow, all that falls under zoning at one level and zoning on an economic level.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Mike, do you envision that the evaluation of the common will consider multiple zoning scenarios in its evaluation? Because we have these parallel tracks where one track is addressing zoning, and then the other track, the common right now, could be impacted by that zoning, so we look at multiple variables?
Yes, to answer your question, yes to all those, because as the consultant who worked on the master plan pointed out, the way the zoning is currently set up in the common, it may not necessarily accommodate, shall we say, some of the development, shall we say, potential it may have after sewering and other infrastructure becomes available to it.
So do you envision feedback between the evaluation of the common into zoning and feedback from the zoning evaluation into the common?
Yes, I mean, the commons are not the only place, there's also Taylor Street, there's, you know, the list is.
I mean, I would think that you'd want to get the zoning part done first. It just seems like that would be
That's why
one
I'm
of the
here.
priorities.
That's why we're here.
I mean, I get working on things in conjunction, but if there's certain federal rules that we haven't looked at, and all of a sudden it changes what we can do from a zoning perspective, and we're already talking about doing something with the common that might fall into that zoning regulation that we can't do, then all of a sudden we've got to go backpedal.
No, I think you're making these in sequence where they're very different kinds of things. The diagnostic looks at existing bylaws, what we already have in place. The assessment looks at what do we have now that helps us, what do we have now that hinders us from a, shall we say, realization of the common of any of the sites around town.
I get it. Just go ahead, move on.
Well, no, but I mean, what I'm hearing is, if you say, let's get the zoning fixed, then it's fixed, then you say, oh, but we'd like to do this on the common, well, zoning, well, we didn't think about that, we just thought about what we have now, and so that's what you've got to have this back and forth,
Doing them in
right?
parallel doesn't mean either one's gonna get done in a
Yeah,
vacuum.
yeah.
This is-
Right.
Zoning
Right.
analysis is an ongoing process.
Right, but that's why I'm worried about an analysis, paying $50,000 for a consultant today, and then we can agree that this project's gonna take long time, years. And then having to pay another consultant come in, because if there's, I don't know how quick, these laws changing that fast, it sounds like, if we're out of
But
compliance.
you're talking about the laws, all right?
Right.
All right. It's important that we identify for the town, even for current use,
Okay.
it's very essential that the current bylaws be brought immediately into compliance. Otherwise, we're basically, not in danger, gross danger, but projects can be stopped
Yeah.
because of lack of compliance with the federal and state rules. All
Mike,
right?
can I,
Yeah, please.
as I understand it, or I'll try my best to explain it, hearing what I hear is a disconnect. The zoning updates, or whatever you want to call them, the compliance issues, that needs to happen. It's going to take a period of time to do it, and then at that point, there ought to be a thing, process in place to make it a continuous event. It just kind of came to light, in the study. That being said, the common project is, a nuts and bolts, concrete, and, project that needs also to get underway because a piece of it is already happening in the form of the sewer. And anything else we want to envision in terms of traffic modification, pedestrian access, infrastructure, changes in the road layout, those zones. We need to get that kind of stuff being looked at professionally, concurrent with the sewer project. And anything, obviously, that's going to be done there would likewise be subject to the same zoning compliance issues. So I don't think you necessarily have to wait. Anything new you put on the table, you just make sure it's in compliance while you're updating the compliance of your existing bylaws. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does. I'm just looking at it from the financial side of the 50,000. I mean, I agree. I think you had mentioned that you're not sure if that's an exact.
I'm
I know.
just trying to.
I would imagine that's going to get a lot bigger over time as we get into this. So I just,
Yeah, it probably won't be a one-shot deal, and I'm hoping not to spend the whole 50 this, but, why take a chance? I don't want to come back to you and
understand.
pester you for, more. Next. The next one's okay. All right, transportation. The reason I made a fancier slide for this is to just indicate to you that this is, next to the common, one of the more compelling, important areas for the town. This is just a fraction of what is involved for transportation in the 21st century for this town. And there are many groups, including, well, he's taken off, but the town administrator has been very active on where government to government is necessary. Interactions are great progress. And the other area where we actually have, quote, cross-town connect operating is, of course, the Council on Aging's buses running back and forth, taking people where they want to go. And there's a lot of experience and a lot of know-how there, but this just hits a fraction of what the town is probably going to need in the future, not giving children, the elders, anyone. Cars are not necessarily the way as we know them, not necessarily going to be the same way in the future.
Sure.
So what we're proposing here is very, something that we're going to be undertaking. We're not trying to form yet another committee. We're basically trying to make sure that all the people who are looking at this, have spent time on this, do talk to each other, do share their progress. So we can take advantage of, shall we say, overlaps of interest. And that's been assigned already to a member of our committee, and I will make sure that it gets done. Now the next one. This one is just basically just to emphasize the fact that although this is an important step from the seniors' point of view, and it's also important for the town's point of view, is a carefully, we hope, designed bylaw which will allow targeted housing to occur, which means that not only is it meant for hopefully a particular age group, but also it addresses an economic and financial hardship that many of our seniors face who don't fit into the 40B and yet who don't want to and don't have to buy a large house, 700K and up. So, and there are lots of people who either would like to live in Littleton or already live here, such as folks who frankly work for the town. And why can't they live here? Why don't we see where this targeted housing bylaw takes us? So this, although it's a bylaw, it does not, it costs the money of the consultant to help the planning board put it together, but it can have a very significant effect on our bottom line. Now the next one. I've already talked about the space needs. I think you're very aware that this building has potential for multi-use beyond what it's being used for now. And I will come back to this theme later because it has to do with the discipline and structuring of how the town allocates resources. Next one. Historic survey, already mentioned for that one. That's may turn out to be a very valuable gem, as it were, in our efforts to, shall we say, look at the town differently, especially the common, the Old Depot area and other areas around town. And we're shooting the report. Now what I've done here is I've just gone in, mainly because I wanted to talk to you about or make sure that you were aware that we are aware and very conscious of the cost and benefit of the projects that are in the plan. This is not just, as it were, shiny little gifts that we're, little things that we're interested in doing. We are very, very mindful of these things cost in many different ways. There are benefits, financial and otherwise, but they're costs. So what I've done is extracted from the plan, and some of you may find more. I just picked out the ones that, as chairman, caught my eye from, shall we say, their demand for capital and the effect it could have on how we manage debt, how we manage the project, and more importantly, and this is my main theme, how the town, how you, the planning board, the board of selectmen make your choices. So here are typical ones. And by the way, again, I've just listed the reference in the planning, in the master plan, where these items appear. Now, I put up one that I'm sure you're aware of, the Shaker Lane School may need, or it will need, a renovation and upgrade. That's going to cost N number of dollars. By the way, I'm not here to discuss the specifics of the sources and how much, because a lot of these do not yet have even a preliminary price tag on them. However, we're pushing very hard to get the range of costs, and the committee will persist in its efforts to try to get these range of costs. So these are, shall we say, 5. Can I have the next one?
So can I just add, on the Shaker Lane School, does somehow that come through as a master plan, or you just said, in general,
No,
things that
it's-
the town's looking at?
No, it's in the master plan.
The master plan is a
And
priority.
this is.
The master plan has what is it, 67 things? Mike?
67, yep.
That are ranked in terms of, are they high priority, medium priority, or low priority? Shaker Lane is in there because it's the building that was least recently built or renovated.
Right.
The next school building that's going to get addressed will be Shaker Lane. When that is certainly open for debate and consideration. There's nothing from a school committee perspective that says that needs to happen in the next 1 to 3 years.
But it could affect the master plan overall, other projects.
Certainly, when it comes into
Planning
cycle,
division.
it will have a cascading effect, like a ripple effect, like any of these will on all of each other. So because there's been talk about Shaker Lane, there were talk about it when it came up during the master plan process. And the reason I'm being so emphatic is that the school committee is not contemplating a renovation of Shaker Lane as part of our capital planning right now. There are other things that are going on in town that are going on now, things that are probably going to happen well before that. But everybody should realize it's the next building in line. It's just a cycle. We'll always be cycling through our school buildings. Hopefully the cycles will be 10 to 15 to 20 years before we cycle back across one of them at least, right? And I think, I can't remember when Shaker Lane was redone, I wasn't on the school committee back then, but it's around 20 years, right? So-
I know it came, well, it wasn't one of those meetings that came up, I said, no, we just did it, and of course, you realize, oh, yeah, we did, it was, my kids were. Yeah, exactly.
Just to give you some, thanks, Mike, because I'm living in decades as opposed to moments. All right, so this is, I'm looking at a projects that span, shall we say, 5 to 10 years. So I live in a, shall we say, a longer-term view.
Okay,
as it
all right,
were.
no, that's great, I appreciate it, all that's good information, thank you, I just trying to wrap in my head, put these things together, now I get it, thank you.
Okay.
I actually think it's good that you've got the schools in there,
Yeah.
because as we add housing, we're gonna need to add schools. So, I mean, that's kind of comes
We
down
have to add capacity.
Space.
How we add capacity doesn't necessarily mean adding brand-new buildings. It could be expanding the capacity. There's, the original plans for the high schools that have been explained to me is that there was space left to add a wing. It was, a specific decision was made to build a building like that, so you could tack a wing on and not build a new building. I don't know how feasible that is at the other buildings, but we've started to talk about that. But you're right, I mean, it is, the issue of growth in town will conceivably cascade or ripple through to capacity for schools, capacity for elder services, capacity for transportation, as Mike's been talking about, et cetera, et cetera.
In fact,
That's why the master plan is important.
And this slide just simply shows projects arising, and I just, almost not necessarily went at random, I went through the master plan and identified areas that could arise, shall we say, in the very near future. And to me, the very near future is the next 5 to 10 years. Not tomorrow, not next month. It could happen, but this is my perspective. And I'm trying to, shall we say, encourage you to adopt the same perspective, at least part of the time, when you, as it were, work with the Board of Selectmen, the school committee, and the planning board as you move through your work. And there's just the short list. And I was stimulated to add the library because of the dialogue that went on last evening between the trustees and the representatives of the library and the Board of Selectmen in discussing it, in which the notion that it's someone's turn or a particular project's turn is not based on it should be based on town benefit, financial reward. It has to be based on something that benefits the town as opposed to fulfilling the desires of a particular set of groups who believe that their bicycle has to be of a certain type and shine. So this is a different kind of discipline that has to be brought to bear, and I think the more transparent the boards are in making the point that the decisions are based on benefit to the town with some specificity and based on fiscal responsibility. Not being able to do everything at one time, especially funds, I think the better off the town will be, and so we don't go off the, shall we say, the trail.
I like to think that we're already doing that, though, so.
Well,
But
I like to
continue,
do,
go.
but except when you look for 10 years, I want to.
Well, things get a little foggy, you're right.
Yeah, no, it's good to have the focus all the time through the 5 to 10 year period. I mean, excuse me, but I have to explain, since I worked in the biotech and pharmaceutical industry, we think in terms of, frankly, 10-year cycles. So I'm used to doing this, so to me, it's just ordinary, so.
Surprises do come up, I mean, it was, 3 or 4 years ago when Mike Roy came in and started talking about turf fields, we hadn't heard anything about it, and it was like we wanted to do it right away. So things do come up, and it's good to have, even if it's just discussion, that, this is coming, so.
Agreed. Okay, I'll have the next one. Yeah, we can skip this one simply because this was from internal analysis of different ways in which you want to take a look at, shall we say, making the economic and financial decisions about how to do things. So we can skip this one, move on. I think most of this stuff will be familiar to you about how you schedule, how you think about, shall we say, incurring debt, paying it for it, and how you choose projects. And I'm going to just focus on that last one. The next slide. All right. I'm just going to skip to the lower portion because I'm overusing your generous time. And that's go to choices. And I'd just like to give you a sample, just a sample of how our committee at least is beginning to think or has been thinking about and how we're approaching the implementation. For example, do projects of interest generate revenue, direct or indirect? That is, The town does not have, and through taxpayer resources alone, an endless source of gold. We need new sources, additional sources of revenue. Every one of the towns around us do. It may behoove us and some of the other towns to start thinking regionally and not just locally about addressing sources of revenue and how to use resources. I'll just make a suggestion, the library could be one of them. This is a micro example. Multipliers. If you build a house, there are multipliers associated with it. What that simply means, I'm sure all of you know, is that the residents of the home are known to spend money on food, clothing, repairs. In fact, Littleton is notable, as other towns are here, for using goods and services to maintain and repair their homes. It's a fairly intense turnover, churning of money, which basically forms a multiplier. Now, obviously, certain kinds of industry generates a bit more, depending on the industry. This is another driver that might influence choices about what we choose to do, how we use our resources. Are there multipliers? How big are they? What are they? Next is obviously identifying and reducing more costly solutions. Do we build a new building or renovate what we've got? And why? And look at it seriously for the town to think of it, do we buy new or do we renovate? What's the pluses and minuses on that? Without forgetting the other two. And the other thing, obviously, is just how crucial is a project, especially the capital-intensive ones, for desired services and amenities. Determining that is a political issue, and I mean it with a capital P and with great admiration. That's the height of policy making, of politics, to decide and lead in identification of items that are crucial for desired service and amenities. And then, of course, we have, my favorite at least, external factors over which we have no control, which is the economy around us and markets. And I'll be very happy at a session involving beverages and other things to discuss with you various aspects of what's coming in the economy and the trends that are seen that can affect us. I just want to leave you with one thought on this particular item, and that is that so far in my poll of folks who watch these things, if and when we have another recession, and a recession is inevitable according to these folks, it will be harder to get out of. Now, you're all nodding your heads and we're all individually mourning. However, that may be a time for the town to strike, as it were, to fund some of the things that we're doing, because at this point, as it were, it's to our advantage sometimes because of interest rates and economic condition to do that.
Prevailing wage is a preventer of that.
Next one. Okay. The point of view here is that I'd like to see, or we're asking, and we're taking on, is we're taking a look at the impact, the best estimates that we can get, and those of course will change over time, because as we get closer and closer to knowing what the cost of something, we can start looking at what the impact will be. And there are obviously the three obvious time periods that interest us. We will communicate with and encourage other boards to, as it were, follow us along, and we'll follow them with respect to this, and also to communicate more extensively with residents perhaps than in the past to make sure this happens, so they understand that all the boards are, as it were, looking at what is the impact of what we do on what happens in town. Now the next one. We've already discussed this. Next one. I'm just going to close here and suggest that what the town needs is the incorporation of what's in the master plan into, as it were, the yearly, the bi-yearly, the 5-year, the 10-year economic outlook for the town. And instead of, again, I want to repeat that the aim here is to not have this stand outside of consideration, that this becomes, as it were, the guidebook for what the town wants to do and where it wishes to go. So that we can dissolve the MPIC committee. You can then
You signed
take
up
it
for a
on.
10-year deal, didn't you?
What did you say?
You signed up for a 10-year deal, didn't you?
No, my actuary tables don't conform. So nothing to do with it.
There's no risk for you to sign it.
Enormous risk because I have to take out an insurance policy based on somebody else.
Well, but that would help us pay for some of the things.
No,
we
we'll
should.
we'll put a sidewalk in his name.
Oh, there you go. I'll be happy with an honorable mention. I think that's it.
Tough crowd.
All right, so are there any other questions?
No.
No, it's a very nice presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah, thank you for coming before us.
Great, thank you very much.
It's a lot to digest, and that's
Yeah.
more to digest.
And actually, I did bring a couple copies in, they're available, if anybody wants a hard copy.
Oh, I'd love a copy of that. That's some great reading.
It's online for those of you who like to watch the flicker screen. So please do peruse it. There's some interesting little, shall we say, not little, important information there. For example, I don't know how many of you are aware, but 70% of this town is open space. Town space.
70%?
70%.
We wear that as a badge of honor. That's a badge of honor, by the way.
Since Mike's presentation was focused on substance and exhortation to engage, I thought it was worth mentioning too our process, which we've adopted. We're a 7-member committee jointly appointed by both the selectmen and the master plan, and our job is mostly to nag everybody else into doing their jobs. That's because...
Are you on this committee?
Yes.
How did I guess that?
Lesson learned from the previous master plan, whatever its faults or benefits, not enough time, effort was put into making sure it became a living document. So
I would agree with that.
that's the point of our existence. But we also recognize that, we're, those 67 items probably represent a couple dozen town committees or departments, and they need to be reminded or helped along. Some will want to drive doing their own agenda, some will want some help with it. So we've, Mike and Anna have made assignments amongst the 7 of us. Mike Fontenelle is on board as well. We all have different departments, so I think collectively, everybody should be hearing from one of us, So that's, the objective is to make sure that people don't drop the ball on what the town expects them to do.
Go ahead. I was going to say, it's interesting you brought that up, because one of the things when he was talking, and I really appreciate the way you to the point and not a lot of extra word and fluff. It was very good, thank you. But the thing that kind of came, the Pollyanna in me said, done right, and if we really do absorb that all the way, you say the potential for the communication across groups that doesn't happen now is huge, right? And so besides all the impact things that this does, just getting the town to really think more about what I do does impact other areas, and where do we go for that? I mean, that by itself could be huge, right?
Hope so.
Yeah.
The other thing to keep in mind, as an extension of that, is the thing that made the master plan process so fulfilling and we think valuable was the community, not just the boards talking about themselves, but the community input that we were able to solicit through the techniques that we use, which were recommended by the consultant that we used, worked very well. And in terms of implementing the master plan, we've already been talking about trying to keep that momentum moving forward. But in terms of the more day-to-day, year-by-year governance that we go through, anything that we can do as boards to try to engender that type of feedback and input from the community, we're only all going to be better off for having done it.
Okay. Well, again, I thank you for presenting that, Anna and Mike, you guys, good job on that.
Just remember, it's MPIC.
Well, I had it written down as something else, and that's where I got all screwed up, so I apologize.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead. Chuck.
Can I just ask that the presentation be shared with us so that we can use the table of contents there where it references different pages in the master plan? That'd be great if we could get an electronic copy of that shared with each of the boards.
Yeah, Maren, can you send that out to all of us?
That'd be great.
Appreciate that. Anything else for Board of Selectmen?
No.
Anything else? Good. All right, well, I think we covered everything on our agenda. I think in closing, though, I'd like you to come back maybe in another, 4 or 5 months or something like that. Give us periodic updates. When you think you've got something, let us know, and we'll put you on the schedule to come back in and
Let's
update
put
us.
a dashboard, this is definitely.
Yeah, this is definitely dashboard. MPIC. All right, I'm gonna look for a motion to adjourn, because I think I'm done for the night. I don't know about you guys.
So moved.
Anything else? Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.